welcome to Insight. Today on Insight, Sudan and Ethiopia. We will be discussing the relationship between Ethiopia and Sudan with Hashem Mekki, who is the founder of Kelly Global, a nonprofit, and also Momentum Africa podcast founder. So Hashem, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Gizal. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, first I want to thank you for hosting the Ethiopian webinar last Monday. How did you come to host that event, and how many people did watch that event?
Well, thank you so much for this great question, because the events came about when I got a call from my dear friend and former colleague from George Mason University. His name is Florindo Chifokute, and Florindo Chifokute is the executive director of Friends of Angola, where Bisu Falaka, who is a board member, also sit on his board. So I got approached that we would like to arrange or coordinate an event where I run the African Strategic Forum at the Institute of World Politics, where it's hosted. So I said, sure, we could come to terms of organizing the event. And then after that, I get to be introduced to Gannet Nguzi, who is with the Ethiopian Advocacy Network, INC. So then from that time, which is about a month and a half ago, around almost 2 months, we've been talking and coordinating the event and reaching out to the prospective speakers, and also working in cooperation within these three entities to come about and host the webinar that you've watched.
Okay. I think I need to introduce Gannet. Gannet Nguzi is an Ethiopian activist, a very dedicated Ethiopianist, and she has been hosting webinars to share the Ethiopian view vis-a-vis the transformation or the reform in Ethiopia, and also the problems and opportunities in Tigray. So we thank Gannet for hosting that. And that event was watched by many expatriates to understand the Ethiopian situation. So now, before I go to the Sudan and Ethiopia,
and
you can add. Go ahead.
Yeah. As of this morning, I got the word from my assisting team at the IWP, the events coordination team, that we have reached about 21,000 plus within 48 hours. And it has been shared by many. It has been shared like 400 times. And there have been also many, about 336 different reactions. So the event overall has been received very well. It's been attended by about 200 who have streamed the event live, who have watched the event live at the time when we were actually discussing the issues. So I've gotten really great feedback about people who have watched it, that the panelists have given somewhat very balanced contributions with their discussions, and all that I have received with that is all positive, and it has been a very successful, that went viral within 48 hours.
Yeah, and I should note that very notable people like from the Atlantic Council, Miss Bruton, Bronwyn Bruton, from Europe, Jan Avnik, and other notable people participated. So Ethiopians need to get out their narratives out, and that was a very helpful event. And I really want to thank the participants and the host, you and Gannet. But before I go to our main issue, I want to give you an opportunity. You have a couple of your own sort of foundations, if you will. There is the Kelly Foundation, a non-profit, and also you have a podcast. So how about briefly tell us what is the Kelly Foundation and what is Momentum Africa?
Kelly Global is a nonprofit that I founded about a year and a half ago. And Kelly Global's mission is it's a youth-centered nonprofit founded here in Washington, D.C., with the hope and aspiration of working with youth in Sudan and South Sudan. But also, my plans is in the future, as this nonprofit grows, is to go beyond South Sudan into East Africa, working on issues of education, but also public health, but also working with economic empowerment for women and working for other issues that are important to our communities in Africa, generally speaking. So this is the mission of Kelly Global, which is a fairly new nonprofit. And also Momentum Africa podcast. It was an idea that was born about the same time where I came up with the African Strategic Forum. And the reason I came up with the Momentum Africa podcast is because I wanted to interview leaders, African successful leaders who have incredible stories, but their stories are not told. As you know, often in Africa, people who are big leaders like Nelson Mandela and others, their stories are told, but there are also a lot of heroes and heroines who are doing incredible work and missions across the continent. Their stories are not heard. So that's the mission, that I would like to tell their stories so that we can inspire current and future leaders who can look up to them and say that one day they can also dream to be the leaders. And by that, then we can change and bring about paradigm shift in our communities and societies across African countries. And so far, being so blessed with the podcast, has received very good feedback on country 8 now. So I interview a leader from each country with the hope that to reach 54 countries in the future.
When we say leaders, we don't mean necessarily political leaders. It could be leaders from other fields of life, or only political leaders.
This is a very good question. When we say leaders, we are talking about leaders in different interdisciplinary leaders. That means leaders from across different sectors, people in business, people in IT, people in public health, people in politics, people in the entertainment industry, basically whoever does a job that qualifies him to be a leader within the community and try to uplift and bring about change. So yes, this are across the board. Some are small leaders, but nevertheless, they're doing very amazing jobs. I've interviewed someone in Uganda who was running for a council office, who has just won. Zenabu Ngise has just won her council office that she was running for. I've interviewed a guest from Nigeria, 2 actually from Nigeria. I've interviewed Haulak Siksi from Tunisia, who is championing woman issues in Tunisia, Black woman issues in Tunisia. I've also interviewed 2 phenomenal community leaders here who are working on things like cryptocurrency within the, but they're from Liberia and Ghana. So I interviewed them both. So those are the samples that I'm interviewing, and these are people who are doing incredible jobs in the communities. Each of them bring a lot to the table.
Good luck with those endeavors. And you are from Sudan, of course. I didn't introduce you as a Sudanese because
yes.
We all know that. So before we go to Ethiopia and Sudan, can you briefly describe the situation in Sudan right now?
Yes, the situation in Sudan, as you know, is Sudan has gone through a revolution. We call it the December Revolution of 2019. And that revolution has brought about change. As you know, this revolution was brought about through youth movement or youth protests, you may say, on the streets of Khartoum. And these are youths who have taken to the streets to protest against the increase of fuel subsidies, food items prices increased, and so forth. And then it changed later on to bring about a political change that we witness in the country. So Sudan has gone through tumultuous times, of course, as you know, being a neighbor from eastern country, Ethiopia, which is a neighborly country. So the country is still going through some of change as it tries to move on to a more civilian-led government.
Mm-hmm. As you said, after the change from dictatorship, the Sudanese political system has been very unstable.
Yes.
There are insurgencies in Kordofan, in Darfur, and the Blue Nile provinces. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yes, and those the states that you've alluded to, Blue Nile and Nuba Mountains or Southern Kordofan and Darfur, the conflict in Sudan, as you might know, has gone for decades, 3 decades or more. So with the revolution, people have been hopeful in those areas that this revolution might bring about some stability to needed stability to this people from particularly from this marginalized, we call them marginalized areas of the Sudan, because they have not been lucky enough to be stable for 3 decades. I come from Nuba Mountains, a person which is the part of southern state, southern Kordofan state. So that's a neighboring state to Darfur, and Blue Nile is on the other side. So those areas, as we speak, are still very fragile. They're still very fragile because the government in Khartoum are still working through many of the issues, as you know. So, but there's a lot of hope and enthusiasm that maybe this revolution could bring about a lasting peace to these people in this area who have suffered. And a lot of them, like in the Darfur region, there are a lot of people who are internally displaced and living in camps. Blue Nile as well. Blue Nile and Nuba Mountains also have a lot of issues. And we're talking about issues of poverty, but poverty that is caused by constant struggle for stability, but also that, issues that, and that's what I'm trying to focus on as my nonprofit. I'm trying to go in, try to help and seize this moment of some hope for peace and stability to bring about development projects such as education, public health, working with youth, working with women, and and rebuilding the country. So that's what I can say in terms of the situation. That yes, Sudan economically is still not there because they have a lot of issues to handle. As you know, Sudan had sanctions. Sanctions have been levied against the government of Sudan, but the international community, given this revolution and the governance of Prime Minister Hamdok, there's some goodwill from the international community trying to bring about some and assist the current government so that they can transition into more civilian, if you would say, democratic institutions, whereby its economy and a lasting peace could be achieved.
Mm-hmm. One more question related to that. I looked at the Sudanese map and all these 3 provinces, South Kordofan, Darfur, and the Blue Nile provinces are in the south part, mostly bordering the South Sudan. Is this by any means related to the split in Sudan? Are these people feeling the same ambition to be free or to join South Sudan?
Very good question. And it's a tricky question because this is one of the issues that the Sudanese at large have been working on. Of course, you know, the CPA, which was the document that actually was signed in Nefasha. Correct me if I mispronounce it. Is a city in Ethiopia where the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005 was signed, and that was the blueprint for the existence of South Sudan now, as we have it as a newly independent state in Africa and Sudan, of course. So that Comprehensive Peace Agreement basically drew the lines, or the status of Abyei, Nuba Mountains, and Blue Nile were not settled properly. So some of these issues are issues that the peace agreement did not settle very well. Now, when the fourth, if you move and you bring this closer to our current days, and from 2005 to now, you have the issue of Juba peace. So, as you know, these different political parties have tried to sign peace in Juba so that they could be a part of the more, you could say, comprehensive peace. So Sudan is still dealing with bringing these different regions and different factions, different opposition groups into a more comprehensive peace, so that at last Sudan overall, from east to west to north to south, can enjoy a more durable peace.
It's also my recollection. I think the oil line from Sudan, the pipelines go through the Blue Nile province. I may be wrong on this, but one more question before I go to the relation to Ethiopia. According to international reports or observers, many of the literature I have seen see the primary problem in Sudan, maybe not the primary, but a significant problem is the disconnect or the competition between the military council and the civilian government. Can you talk about that?
Are you the civilian and military? You're talking about Sudan in particular? Yeah. I think based on my read too, I probably read the same things. You hear this on the news, of course, internationally and locally, that there is somehow a friction between the civilian and the military. But it helps to point out that the very existence of the current government was a compromise reached by African Union came into Khartoum, namely Abiy Ahmed came into Khartoum to broker that peace. So to broker peace between the civilian-led, movement these are professional. We call them the Hurriya wa Taghyir, which is freedom and change professional association, which comprises of many civilian-led organizations and non-profit and political parties and such. So they were able to form a coalition government. So Sudan is governed, as you know, currently between in a coalition government between the civilian and military. And there's a lot of talk, of course, about the frictions that you alluded to. But the military is in control for a number of months, and then they would transition power to the civilian part, and then the civilian would rule going forward when they transition into a full-led civilian government.
So, as you know, and I'm sure I have lived in the Sudan and Ethiopia have been neighbors forever. And in the last few months, there have been two significant issues of contentious issues. One is let's start with the border issue. The Sudanese military, according to international media, the Sudanese military has grabbed or has taken possession of some of Ethiopian territory, and what is what is the understanding Sudanese have? Why what do Sudanese feel about this endeavor, particularly given that, as we discussed, Sudan has so many internal problems? Why did this issue become a priority, either for the military or the prime minister, and take this action at this time?
Yeah. So, well, yeah, this is definitely a very thorny issue between the two countries. What I will start with is, given that you lived in Khartoum in Grave, and I lived there, I went to a school with my dear friends who are from Ethiopia and Eritrea as well in Sudan. And I have friends from Ethiopia, so they love us. We love them back. We listen to the music. They listen to our music. We eat the same food that they eat. And so the bond between the people, and I'm going to emphasize the people to people between Sudanese and Ethiopians, the bond is so strong that it's unbreakable. What I've listened to as I follow this, just the same way you've been following on the news from the media, that when they interviewed Ethiopians who are in Khartoum, they're all saying that they don't have problems with the Sudanese. And then you talk to the Sudanese, to have friends who I talk to that, for instance, I talked to a friend who is active in Sudan on the ground, that they're in a coalition of 97 civilian groups, basically with initiative calling for peace in the Horn of Africa. And of course, Horn of Africa includes Ethiopia. So my read about this is that nobody in Sudan, as far as people, nobody wants war. I might also say maybe Ethiopians also don't want war. So I think, in my opinion, which doesn't matter too much, this is just my opinion as someone more neutral on the issue, is that war is not an answer to solving our African problems in East Africa or anywhere in Africa. So I think this is an issue that can be resolved within the regional power, IGAD, or the African Union. I think, and I do trust that they do have the mechanisms in place to handle any tensions or issues that the two neighboring countries have, which are bound together historically, socially, culturally by long history Ethiopia and Sudan have. So I think this issue could be dealt within African solution for African problem within the African Union and IGAD.
No, I agree. I can also tell you, Ethiopians do not want war. We have our hands full about issues within Ethiopia, as you know. But also, why I raised the other issues, the Kordofan and Blue Nile, is Sudan also has that. But I mean, that takes me to the next point. The next point is the GERD, the dam on the Blue Nile. And Sudan, a couple of years ago, maybe I think even a year ago, was mostly on the side of Ethiopia during negotiations. But in the last few months, Sudan has switched side and has supported the Egyptian side. So and part of maybe this is a proxy way of pressuring Sudan to take advantage of Ethiopia's current crisis.
Hello? Yeah. So, I organized a panel about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, on the issue of the GERD, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Yes. So I'm not an expert on dams and hydraulics, but I had a panelist, Dr. Moses, and also Sweb from Germany, who's Egyptian, who joined in. And what I saw from the discussion is that it seems like both countries have their own issues when it comes to, for Ethiopia is the electricity and development, and for Egypt is water water. They want to make sure that they have the water. So, and what I've been observing is tensions do happen within the context. So I'm not going to take sides on the issue, but I think what I'm hoping is that Sudan, Egypt, Ethiopia, as neighbors, we want to have a more peaceful dialogue to resolve these issues. And again, I just don't have opinion so much on it, but I'm just reflecting on the panelists' views on what I saw happening. That what I think ought to happen again, just the same way as the border issue, African Union as the mediator, and also you have the regional body EGAT. They could sit together and reach a settlement. What settlement that is fair for Ethiopia, and then also if Egypt has issues, that that settlement, they could also address those issues. And if the Sudanese have issues, as long as the African Union and EGAT are the sponsors of this dialogue, and which they are, and they're neutral, I believe that this African issues of historically bound together neighboring countries, Ethiopia and Sudan, can be resolved. And also with Egyptians, this could be resolved within a manner that is more peaceful, that through dialogue, through diplomacy, and people should avoid conflict or armed conflict at all costs, because Africa has a lot of issues, as you know. Ethiopia has a lot of issues internally, as we went through the panel, and Sudan has a lot of issues internally, and Egypt also does have a lot of issues internally. So I don't think this benefits anybody if people are resorting to conflict or raising and adding fuel to the fire. I think this could be resolved within by dialogue, a more peaceful way, through the negotiations and a sponsorship or auspices of the African Union and IGAD.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think there is no benefit to Ethiopia and Sudan from a conflict. But I think the concern is the push from Egypt. As I don't know how much you follow this. Egypt has been very loud in terms of agitating against Ethiopia, particularly given what's going on in the northern parts of Ethiopia. There is a perception that Ethiopia is weak and we can pressure it to get our way. I think the Egyptian process. But let me ask you this. I don't know if you follow the sentiment or the writings and the discussion in different forums of Sudanese people, Sudanese intellectuals, Sudanese elite. What is the general feeling of Sudanese people about these issues, the territory and the GERD, in general, peace and the relationship between the three countries?
Most Sudanese I talk to are not concerned about these issues. They're talking about the internal issues, bread and butter, and peace and security for their own families, honestly. So I don't hear much about, the issue with the border. I don't hear much about the GERD. I don't hear that much from I'm talking regular people. So I just see this and hear about this in the international media, but also in the, just on social media. But most people you talk to on the ground, they're worried about their daily life. Like I was emphasizing earlier, that people are worried about their daily living, bread and butter issues, and safety and security for their own people, and exercise of freedom within their own countries. These are the friends that I talk to on the ground, family members and all that. Nobody talks about war at the border.
Yeah, actually, it's just a few years ago. I remember when I was in Sudan, Numeri was the strong man, the dictator, and then of course Bashir came, and I remember Sudan was to some extent really a certain form of Islamic rule, Sharia rule, to
Yes.
not very strict, but to some extent. And it looks
Yes.
like that has changed, and we are moving into a non-religious political environment. Is my reading right or wrong?
Yes, I would definitely say there's a sense since in the post December revolution that there's a big dialogue, as you probably follow, between Abdulaziz El-Hilo, the commander of the Sudan People Liberation Movement North, that is in southern Kordofan area, and the Blue Nile. They're calling for, during the peace negotiation, actually they signed a document in Ethiopia between the prime minister and the leader, and in that the document stipulates that basically they want a secular governance system within this transition government and going forward. And so this has been the sticky point for the Sudan. And you observe that there's a sense of openness, generally speaking, when I follow and when you talk to people. There's a new, like I was saying earlier, momentum of openness, some sort of transparency and some freedom. So people have started becoming more freer to express themselves. Something that did not exist under the rule of Omar Bashir. As you know, he was this brutal dictator who has ruled for 30 years with iron fist, and a lot of civil liberties were crushed under his rule for about 30 years. But you feel like there's some sense of openness right now in Sudan vis-a-vis these civil liberties of expressing yourself and fighting for your rights. So a lot of groups have come out, and a lot of political groups have been formed to exercise and participate in this transitional environment towards civilian rule, which is a good indication.
Indeed, a very good indication. Actually, the Sudan, I know, a few years ago, making peace with Israel was unthinkable. I mean, as we know, Osama bin Laden used to reside in the Sudan, and other literature I read, I think in the news, I should say, is that one of the Sudanese calculation was by making peace with Israel, there will be foreign investment and inflow of foreign investment from European and American countries. But I read stories that say that Sudan's economy is really reeling, and there is a hard currency problem. Is there anything you know about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's the reasons I was alluded to earlier. The reasons why Sudan went through a revolution to start with, and toppled Omar Bashir, is because there was an increase in prices of main subsidies. Low for up to now, people are still struggling, lining up to buy loaves, but also gasoline to fuel their cars and things like that. These are still things that are still left over from the old regime, and they still talk in the media right now that the Sudanese economy is suffering, and the Prime Minister Hamdok's government have come to power with the hope of opening up the economy by building good relationship with the international community. As you know, he used to live in Ethiopia, and he has a lot of experience working with UN agencies. So he's an economist too. So I think the hope of the protesters and the people who led the revolution, by having someone who understands this economic issue, is to address the ills of the former regime, by which I mean to pave the way for peaceful Sudan, but a prosperous Sudan that attracts foreign currency, the IMF, the World Bank. These are all institutions that had not being able to loan money to Sudan. So you can imagine if we don't get, access to this hard currency, what that does to your economy. So with Prime Minister Hamdok being the head of the government now, these international institutions and the world community has started to embrace, but also try to assist this transitional government with the hope that they could transition to democracy and a civilian government. Say yes, the economy is one of the biggest challenges that faces this current Hamdok government. So if he improves that and brings about comprehensive peace in areas that you alluded to, or you mentioned, Darfur region, Blue Nile, Abyei region, Nuba Mountains, and the Far East, of course. So these are issues that would determine the stability of Sudan economically and politically.
Yeah, I think you are right, and I think the Prime Minister Hamdok has good plans, but many observers believe the strong man in Egypt, Al-Sisi, is pressuring the military, and the Prime Minister does not control the whole, or does not have the power of his office. He doesn't control the military. So, and the military, particularly to pacify the internal population, is starting wars in Ethiopia. Let's hope Hamdok can withstand the pressure from the military.
Yes, all the Sudanese are basically agreeing with you, praying the same prayer that they hope that Hamdok would bring about a lasting change that suits those youngsters who braved the age and went out there and did this remarkable thing of overturning a government that lasted for 30 years. It wasn't easy, and people are still on the streets asking for justice and accountability for those people who perished. And it's not an easy thing for a government that is trying to bring about democracy like Hamdok. So I can only imagine it's a very challenging. Like you said, Ethiopia also is going through the same thing with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. So democracy is not easy, but we hope that Africa has the strengths and has the skills and strong leadership to bring about this change. But they're not easy, to agree with you.
Yeah, the stability of Ethiopia is very important for all the bordering countries, as is the stability of Sudan. As we know, South Sudan itself has been unstable for a while, and another unstable Sudan and starting conflict with Ethiopia will be a disaster for the Horn of Africa, maybe even for the whole of Africa, as Ethiopia is the second largest.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you that war is not an answer. It's not in the interest of Ethiopia or Sudan or Egypt. War is not an answer for our African problems. So Sudanese would not benefit from war, and Ethiopian would not benefit from war. Egyptian would not benefit from war. The only way forward is dialogue, peaceful negotiations, whatever the issues are, whatever these conflicts are. The African Union and IGAD, they have the ability to resolve these issues between these neighborly and friendly and brothers and sisterly countries peacefully.
Yeah, another thing I just want to mention is the Ethiopian dam, the GERD, is not using the water. It is just a pass-through. It's a dam. Once the dam is full, Sudan will get the same amount it would have gotten. Now, there are technical issues, what happens if there is a drought, blah, blah, blah. But in general, Sudan will not, even Egypt will be getting regular water. But on the other hand, Egypt, as you probably know, uses 95 whatever percent of the Nile water. We don't use it, even though we produce it. When I say we, both Sudan and Ethiopia. So I think Sudan's future is better served by peaceful coexistence with the region as Ethiopia's future benefits. So let me give you an opportunity to conclude our conversation.
Well, thank you so much. And in conclusion, I agree with you 100% that peace in the region is important. Ethiopians and Sudanese are brothers and sisters, and a war at the border would not benefit either country. The only way is to show restraint and also to use wisdom for on both sides. It requires leadership, a strong leadership that uses peaceful negotiations and diplomacy to resolve issues is the way forward. And Egyptians also can resort to diplomacy. Whatever issues they have with Ethiopia or Sudan, they can be resolved within the African Union so that we could have peace in the Horn of Africa and Africa at large.
Thank you, Hashem. I really appreciate it. And I hope you will come back on another subject and we will have a productive discussion. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. That has been Insight for today. Thank you. Bye.